Former Conservative leader Iain Duncan Smith is here. It is very good to see you, sir. How are you?
And you, and you.
Well, look, this is a mess, isn't it? We're now in a complete and utter mess where we don't know if we're coming or going. Parliament's being prorogued. No one seems happy. What is anyone at home meant to make of this?
Well, actually, it is a mess. I completely agree with you. And I think the biggest problem we've had is that we've had a government that has, my government, has allowed this to meander, the previous leader, Theresa May's government, for really getting on for 3 years. The British people voted to leave. And let me just take head on those ridiculous charges. They didn't vote to leave without a deal or anything else. The truth is, I was one of the prominent figures in the campaign. I can tell you categorically, it was quite clear, the Prime Minister then, David Cameron, and George Osborne, who led the Remain campaign, said categorically, when you leave, you won't be in the single market, the customs union, you'll have to be out, completely out. So the whole point about this is really that people voted to leave. You can't read into their heads what they voted for. And Boris Johnson now is a breath of fresh air, frankly. He's come in and said, look, we have one purpose in life, which is to deliver what people voted for, which is to leave, get on with it, get the job done, and then have, we hope, a good relationship with the European Union. But if we don't tell them and believe that we will leave without a deal if necessary, as, by the way, Article 50 explicitly says, you leave on the set date, doesn't say anything about having a deal, and that's the end of it.
You know, if you're going to be nice and frank with us this morning, let's talk this prorogation. Ben Wallace was right, wasn't he, when he was caught off mic? This isn't actually about setting a domestic agenda, is it? It's about trying to stop Parliament blocking no deal.
No, I listened to what Ben Wallace said. I thought what he was saying is there are lots of other issues around, but I don't think I have any particular problem with it. Let's just deal with this prorogation issue. First of all, there's a lot of crocodile tears and totally faux shock and horror about this. The reality is for John Major, just out of interest, who wants to go to court, I don't recall he went to court when he prorogued the House to stop there being any cash for questions issues. You know, politicians are very good at forgetting what they used to do and remembering only what they want to. So the reality is, prorogation is not some ancient idea. It happens all the time. It normally happens every single year. Only we've had the longest Parliament ever for 400 years. We should have had a Queen's speech well over 2 years ago, but we didn't, and we haven't had one a year ago. We need one now. Boris Johnson's just been elected leader. He's right. And there's always been a conference season. I don't recall Labour getting up, by the way, in the summer and saying, we're going to cancel our conference. We want to be in the House. They didn't say that because they want their conference. And the Liberal Democrats didn't say we're going to cancel our conference. So they were all happy to go to the conference, which they normally would do. This amounts to 6 parliamentary working days in which we are prorogued. Let's get this in perspective. And all those people marching yesterday have either completely got it wrong because somebody told them something which is untrue, or most of them, as I believe, were actually engineered by the hard left of Labour. Because look at the placards. They were sort of, get rid of Boris, hang Boris. There's some really foul commentary going on social media as well. So this is very engineered by the hard left, which John McDonnell you saw earlier, despite the casual-looking nature of his interview, is, however, deeply sinister and part of that ghastly momentum crowd who just threaten everybody.
There is an argument that says, you know, if you stop a no deal, it stops a good negotiation. You've made that argument to me,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Would you actually want a deal? Would you really want a deal? I mean, I know you backed the Brady Amendment when that was up, but you have changed your position somewhat since then, haven't you?
No, what happened was very simply, I don't like the withdrawal agreement. I think it's a bad deal. I think we started to negotiate on bended knee, and I think by the end of it, we ended up on all fours. And I have to tell you, that's no way to run a negotiation. Why? Because we gave the EU everything they wanted, literally back in December 2017. I went to see the Prime Minister directly and say, don't sign this agreement. You've given them their money, you've given them their continuing period of another 2 to 3 years locked under their rules, and also the likelihood we might end up in the customs union, plus all the other bits about defence. So I said, don't sign this. I was against the withdrawal agreement. The only reason I finally voted for the end was that I feared what was going to happen next, and it has happened. An uproar from the public over the fact we didn't leave on March the 29th, and now all this chaos. So the answer is, get on and do it. And the reality for us is this withdrawal agreement doesn't fly. Boris has said that. Everybody agrees it. It has to have fundamental changes. He's already proposed that. The EU has to step up to the plate. Now, here's a very interesting point. Right now, they're not blinking. Why are they not blinking? Because they hope that what they would privately think are the dupes in Parliament who are going to take away the no-deal option from Boris if they can. That then means they don't have to move at all, because they know Boris then faces the choice of not being able to leave but having to extend. So the Prime Minister needs to face this down, because if they want to withdraw this, they're going to take away one of his most critical tools, which is to go without a deal, and the EU knows this would be enormously damaging, and they're in recession, many of those countries.
But a lot of your colleagues who are seen as very ardent Brexiteers, we know if the backstop was to go, they'd vote for what was left in the withdrawal agreement. You're saying that's not good enough?
No, I wrote a piece about this to say Boris Johnson understands fully well what some of the issues are around the withdrawal agreement, not just the backstop, but issues around legal control during the course of the implementation period, issues around defence. These are all part of those discussions and negotiations. I'm one of those that says I want Boris Johnson to have a free hand in this, to get on with it. I trust him to know what the problems are, and I trust him to do his level best to get a reasonable deal from the EU. But I believe the EU will step up to the plate once they know the alternative to that is Britain leaves without a deal. It's really interesting. A man called Herr Otto Winkel, I think it is, who's a German MEP, said to the Commission, it's your fault. Do you know when Britain leaves, it's like 19 or 20 of the smaller countries, only 27 in total, leaving at the same time. It will be cataclysmic for the European Union. They know that. They're sitting on a deal that gave them everything. They're not going to suddenly say, I tell you what, let's give you back this stuff. But they will once they realise there's no other way but leaving without a deal.
And in terms of the work that needs to be put in, I mean, Simon Coveney, the Deputy Prime Minister in Ireland, was saying, well, look, part of the problem with this, the whole backstop, which just seems to be a key element of this, obviously, is that no serious alternative has been put forward. The government
is simply untrue.
Why
I went to Monsieur Barnier twice, with Owen Paterson and with a team of experts, including customs people. And we, back in October, pointed this out when the deal hadn't been fully agreed to. And they said to us at the time, and in email exchanges, this is probably where we're going to end up. These are all the alternative arrangements. We drafted all this stuff, OK? So they heard about this back in October. We offered to work on it immediately, but then the government caved in and signed this terrible agreement. We went back to see them again in April to say, you know, you could still change this deal and get it through. And the attitude was different because they've got their deal. So Mr. Coveney and the others are talking nonsense. The reality is that there are other arrangements. I've got another paper which is about to be given to the government that shows there are ways to secure our legal position.
Look, Iain Duncan Smith, appreciate your forthright views this morning. Thank you very much indeed.